How do you breastfeed a baby in public? And should you try? We'll find out right now on Keeping Kids Healthy. Hello, I'm Dr. Winnie King in the lobby of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore, so don't be surprised if you hear some noise in the background. When it comes to the best nutrition for your baby, just about all the experts agree that breastfeeding is the healthiest way to go. In fact, if you can do it, they even recommend that breast milk should be the only food you feed your baby for the first 6 months. After that, of course, you need to gradually expand the baby's diet to include other foods. But even then, if you can continue to breastfeed through your baby's first year, it will even make him less likely to get sick. But as natural as breastfeeding is, it isn't always easy to do, partly because it takes some guidance on how to get started, and partly because our society doesn't make it easy for moms to breastfeed as they go about their daily lives. So we decided to go to both kinds of experts to show you how to make it work. The doctors and the real experts, the moms who are doing it. Let's start with a group of moms who visited me in the studio a while ago to tell us and show us what to do. Now, is that the most adorable little talk show guest you've ever seen? This little girl is Sarah Johnson. Hi, honey. She's so precious. And she grew this big and healthy by breastfeeding. She's adorable. She's absolutely... Mom, you did a very, very good job. And Sarah brought her mom along, Robin, and a couple of little friends, too, like Zoe Alpert and Jaden Drawn. And Jaden is busy right now. All of these mothers are breastfeeding their babies, but that's a decision not every mother chooses to make. Today, there's no question scientifically that mother's breast milk is the ideal infant food in almost every case. But breastfeeding is a big commitment for mom and not as easy as some of the books and pamphlets for new moms make it sound. Yes, I know. You agree with that, right? As Carrie Ellen is definitely going to tell us later in the show about her experience. Now, we also have with us today Dr. Deborah Campbell. Now, she's the director of neonatology at Montefiore Medical Center, and we thought also that since we're here talking about nursing, we might as well show you how to do it discreetly without drawing a lot of attention to yourself if you have to nurse in a relatively public place. Now, Robin and Robin have graciously agreed to demonstrate, and now little Sarah has got her little sling here, and that's what she really digs, this sling, right?
Yeah, she loves it. She falls asleep, and it's also a discreet way to breastfeed. It kind of goes over you to the side, and as she's pouched in there, Robin, I think you have one too. And you could just kind of have her in there, and you know, and it's very discreet. Yeah, and she feels comfortable. And yes, now this is a really cool top. This is a nursing top.
This is a nursing top.
Tell us how this works. And I can kind of show you. You can she's a little sleepy right now.
Yeah, well, she's just, you know, had her little feeding, so she's feeling good.
And you can just really position her, and she could just feed just like that.
Yeah, oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, and you can't tell what's going on. I mean, you know what's going on, but you're not showing any body parts that would make someone feel uncomfortable. Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about breastfeeding. Deb, give us some of the science on breastfeeding.
Well, breastfeeding and breast milk is the optimal nutrition for newborns. It contains the proper amount of proteins, carbohydrates, fats that are very important for a child's brain development. In addition, it provides the baby with immunity that will help protect the baby against infection.
And that's really important because you'll probably, unfortunately, experience ear infections if you haven't with your other children, and so protecting them against infections is a huge thing. But there's also some health benefits for mom, too.
There are significant health benefits for mothers in terms of less postpartum bleeding after the baby's born due to the uterine contractions. Also, there's increasing evidence of the benefits in terms of mothers having a lower risk for premenopausal breast cancer as well as ovarian cancer.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because we don't think of breastfeeding as being of any benefit to moms. We think of it as being more of a benefit for the baby and, you know, doing it for the baby, but in fact you're also helping yourself. Now, Carrie Ellen, you have a 4-year-old daughter whom you did nurse, but you were a little reluctant about nursing Jaden. Tell us about that. Why was that the case?
Well, actually, I was more reluctant about nursing my daughter.
Your first one?
Because I had never seen anybody nurse around me. I didn't have any family members who nursed or any girlfriends. So it was a totally new experience for me. And it was incredibly uncomfortable first time around. I had really sore nipples. They were cracked and they were bruised. And it wasn't until I got home from the hospital and got some support from a lactation specialist who taught me about using lanolin, and I healed really quickly, and then I was able to figure it out. But there were a couple of rough days in there where I didn't think I was going to be able to make it through.
Yeah, and a lot of women give up at that point because they just feel, well, okay, I guess it's just not for me. I tried, and you kept going, and that's really what's an important message for women to get out of this show, because I think it's the statistic said that up to 50% of women who breastfeed have trouble at the very beginning, and they get a little help, and then they're able to go forward. So, you know, getting discouraged initially can be a huge mistake. You know, it's really not a big surprise, though, that, oh my goodness, we've just got so much information coming here. You know, she has some stuff she wants to tell us, and we just are not listening to the baby. Oh, yeah, she's so precious. Oh. Using those lungs, we like that, you know. It's really not surprising, though, that many women are discouraged from breastfeeding by concerns like the ones that you've just heard, and also some of the public attitudes about it. Recently, believe it or not, an artist was forced to remove her painting from a show in a local airport because her depiction of a baby nursing at the mother's breast made travelers uncomfortable. Now, here's the picture. You judge for yourself. Nursing in public is really not for everyone, but there's really no question that it can be done discreetly. And our two Robins here have been breastfeeding the babies before the show and during the show. And you know, children, infants, they nurse when they want to nurse. They are not even remotely concerned about this show, and it's not about that at all. It's all about when they feel like doing it. And quite actually, breastfeeding causes more feedings, isn't that right, than bottle feeding? They tend to go like every 3 hours or so.
Breast milk is very easily digestible, so that the babies oftentimes will nurse more frequently.
Yeah. Now, what are some tips, Deb, that we can give our viewers about breastfeeding publicly and doing it in a comfortable way so that they're not feeling so put upon?
Well, I think as our moms here have shared a bit, it really is a matter of having comfortable clothing that can be easily rearranged, using blankets, as Carrie was doing, just to cover yourself discreetly.
Now, I heard something that was very interesting, and that mother-in-laws can sometimes be a huge deterrent to breastfeeding. And you guys are smiling over there, so you didn't have that experience, Robin. Carrie, was that an issue for you? Mother-in-laws?
No, not in my case.
No, not in your, but that is a problem. Apparently mother-in-laws don't like to, or they have a tendency to discourage breastfeeding.
I think that, not to just give mother-in-laws a bad name, I think that as a society we really don't support women and nursing mothers in particular very well. So that for many women, they may be discouraged or not feel as comfortable, whether it's the baby's father, the woman's own mother, or her mother-in-law. If you don't have supports around you, it does become a little more tricky and a little less comfortable for many women.
Well, let's talk a little bit about just the history of breastfeeding. There was a time when there was no question that you would breastfeed your child. I mean, that was it. There was nothing else. Then formulas came along, and we were sort of led to believe that formulas were actually better because they were nutritionally sound for babies. And so I think maybe breastfeeding sort of fell out of favor. And now we're starting to see a resurgence of breastfeeding. And as a neonatologist, if you had to choose between having a child breastfed or taking a formula, what would your choice be for the child?
Well, certainly as a pediatrician and a neonatologist, I advocate for breastfeeding. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that babies breastfeed for at least a year, if not longer. So it certainly is the optimal nutrition, and there, as we discussed, many, many benefits.
Okay, let's talk about some of the downsides to breastfeeding. Are there any that you can think of? I mean, Robin, have you had anything bad happen to you as a result of breastfeeding?
Well, I was telling the other moms before the show, I've had some people in public make some negative comments, but I feel that if more women are out nursing discreetly, then maybe a pregnant woman walking by will say, I can do that. She's not showing anything, it's not indecent.
Yeah. The decision to breastfeed is one that's really important to make and then to sort of stick with, because if you decide that you're going to breastfeed, at what point in the birth of the child do you need to let people know? I mean, right in the delivery room, is it helpful for them to know that you're planning to breastfeed the baby?
Well, I think certainly when the mother comes in planning to deliver, she should let whoever her obstetric care provider, the nurses on the labor and delivery floor, know we actually encourage mothers to start nursing as soon as possible after delivery. Usually the first hour after the baby's born, the baby is wide awake, very alert, and if you were to place the baby on the mother's abdomen, one could watch the baby inch his or her way up to the breast to naturally want to nurse.
Okay. Does it make a difference? I mean, is that really critical in terms of the whole breastfeeding experience, that we get started early rather than later?
It's very, very important to the initiation and successful breastfeeding. In too many hospitals today, mothers still aren't given that opportunity to initiate nursing early. And many of the problems that we see with babies developing what's referred to as nipple confusion, the introduction of bottles, or delay in starting that first nursing episode, really can make it much more difficult.
Yeah, the thing that I'm the most concerned about is that women understand that they have a choice about this, because sometimes, you know, you've just delivered a baby, for goodness sakes. You know, you're feeling washed out, you're wiped out, you've got this new person that you've got to take care of. Some authority figure comes up to you and says, you know, be it a nurse or a physician, and says, no, 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 no. You don't need to breastfeed. You know, your milk didn't come down, or that doesn't work with our schedule. And who are you? This is your first child sometimes. You don't know. You're not going to argue with this authority figure. And they make decisions for you that maybe later down the road you sort of wish that you thought differently about. And I just think it's important to make the decision in advance and to stick with it and to know that you can do it. Did you ever have moments of doubt when you weren't sure?
I absolutely did. And I just feel like it was a triumph just to stick with it. You really, unfortunately, we're still pioneers in this, women who are breastfeeding in public and just breastfeeding in general, and really sticking with it. I was surprised at the discouragement and the negative. I really didn't expect it because it's so natural. It's just your body produces milk for your child, and you just want the whole experience. So I was really surprised that people were constantly stating, oh, you're not producing enough milk. You know, how is your baby? You can't see it. She's not being fed. And
well, that's another thing, is that sometimes they'll kind of give you the impression that your child is undernourished because of the breast milk. Have you heard about that, Robin? People telling
you? My daughter was what they call a slow gainer in the beginning, and I was actually told to supplement formula. But I felt very committed. This is the second time I've nursed a baby. So I felt very committed that I wanted to stick with it.
So. Well, and good for you, because Zoe is absolutely adorable. Now, have any of you gone back to work? Okay, and so what do you do with your breastfeeding responsibilities?
Well, I'm one of these lucky moms that has a child that is able to go between formula and breastfeeding. I knew I was going to have to go back to work when he was 6 weeks old. And so I made the decision that I would supplement when I couldn't be with him and nurse him. And it's just worked out great. And so he's with me in the morning and when I come home at night. And in between he has a bottle. And we've been able to work it out this way. And, you know, if I could send any message out there, it would be, you know, try whatever you can do to make sure that you can still breastfeed, even if you have to supplement a little bit. Because it's a wonderful bond you get with your baby.
Well, I know the bond is really important, and we actually see lower incidences of child abuse in moms that actually nurse their babies, because it creates that bond that's so critical. Now, how long is enough? I mean, we hear stories of, you know, 10-year-olds that are still being breastfed. You know, I mean, at what point is it enough is enough, and what's the minimum? Is there any?
Well, I think that in terms of the length of the time a baby is breastfed, it really is determined by the mother and the baby together. Optimally, as I mentioned, the American Academy of Pediatrics does recommend at least a year. In terms of exclusive breastfeeding, which is clearly very important, and again we encourage, we would like to see that at least for the first 6 months. But any breast milk that a mother gives her baby will be a benefit to the baby, so that for whatever reason, if mother decides not to continue breastfeeding, still there is benefit to the baby.
There's something there for them. And what about pumping your breast for milk so that you can store it at another time? Do any of you do that? Do you? Is it uncomfortable? I've heard women say, oh, I could never do that. I can't have something sucking off my breast, a machine sucking milk out of my breast. It's got to be, but that's what a baby does, right?
It's not the most wonderful thing to do in the world, but you do it because you need to do it. The alternative of becoming engorged is not very comfortable either. So.
Sometimes it really it's a relief, you know, to pump. And also, but you know, I tell you, I find that it's sometimes challenging because you're nursing or you're busy, and then to sit down and to pump sometimes a challenge because you have to be focused and relaxed in order for the milk to come out.
Okay.
So it, you know, it has challenges, but you know.
Now, when it's time to start getting ready to go back to work, what do? Do you have to sort of cut down on the feedings and start supplementing? How do you negotiate that?
You have to figure out what is okay in your workplace. Do you have a place where you can pump? Can you store it? Is it okay with your employers if you get 10 or 15 minutes to go do that? How close by is your baby? I think all those things you have to consider. In my case, I can't do it at all, so I don't. But I know there's a lot of people in places where they work where they actually have breastfeeding rooms that are really supportive for moms who are breastfeeding.
And do any of you have any regrets about breastfeeding? I mean, you seem so happy, and your babies are absolutely beautiful, and they're appropriate, they're fussy, they're sleepy, they're doing all the things that babies do. Any regrets?
No.
I absolutely don't, and I'm glad that I didn't miss out on the whole experience.
Because it really is an experience. Yes. And Zoe is just not having it. She is just not having it.
A clean diaper.
Well, that's okay, but she's hungry and she's fussy and she doesn't understand any of this. Dr. Campbell, any last words for our viewers about the importance of breastfeeding if they're sort of vacillating, kind of on the fence, not really sure?
Well, I think it's important to take the time to find out as much information as you can and to actually look for people that can help support you through the process. It's important to make the decision beforehand and just seek out others.
Okay, good enough. Well, having the chance to talk to those mothers was a real eye-opener, but there are a few problems they talked about that you might just need a little more information to solve. For example, a lot of moms experience some real pain from sore nipples when they start. In a minute, we'll meet 3 more moms, Makita, Gita, and Danielle, and find out how they dealt with some of those problems. But the main point is, don't give up, because lactation consultant Beverly Salo told our producer Justine Simons that learning the right technique of nursing can absolutely get rid of the pain.
Pain in breastfeeding is an indication that something is not right. Now, it's not just if it's painful you're doing something wrong, because this is learned and you're not an expert in the beginning and you have to figure it out. But if a baby is latched on well and sucking properly, it should not be painful.
So, Beverly teaches moms and babies the proper breastfeeding techniques.
An important thing to know about any baby's mouth is that it needs to be open really wide, maybe wider than that, to latch on well.
And once baby opens wide, Beverly uses a diagram to show good latch.
And this is a bit counterintuitive because if the baby is in the right place to latch on well, it actually looks like the mother's nipple is going to go up the baby's nose. You would think that you would start with the mouth centered, but really you want to touch the lower lip about 1 inch from the tip of the nipple so that the nipple just clears the top lip.
I wish that I had known you when she was 3 weeks old because we were nursing and it was really painful.
If moms are comfortable nursing, they're more likely to stick with it, and that has health benefits for babies.
It's perfect nutrition at a time when perfect nutrition is really important.
So Beverly, you were coaching these moms at a New York City store called the Upper Breast Side. How cute is that? It's nice to maintain a little sense of humor in all of this, you know.
Absolutely.
I know that new moms start nursing right in the hospital when they choose to breastfeed, as soon as their babies are born, but when does mom's milk actually come in?
The mature milk typically comes in anywhere from day 2 to day 5, sometimes longer, but for most people early on. And before the mature milk comes in, there's colostrum in the breast, and that's a very concentrated first milk that is usually enough for most babies, and it's chock full of antibodies.
Yeah, it's good stuff. We want the babies to get that. And speaking of good stuff, I have to comment that Rakesh is busily breastfeeding with Gita right now. That's why he's so quiet. He was talking quite a bit earlier, but now he's breastfeeding and very, very comfortable. How do you know when your milk is in?
Most women find that the breasts fill, get denser and heavier. Hopefully they don't get painfully engorged. Some women do experience that. But the breasts fill up and there's a larger volume of milk, and the milk usually gets whiter in color.
Yeah. It's very important for the baby to get enough to eat? I mean, that's the concern moms always have, you know, is my baby getting enough? How do you know if your baby's getting enough food?
Well, there are a number of things to observe, and it's important to look at all of them, at the whole picture. Babies need to feed frequently enough, usually at least 8 times a day. They need to feed effectively with frequent swallowing, not just sucking. They need to appear satisfied after breastfeeding and not be looking for something else to suck on. Usually the breast softens. There are lots of pees and poops, and finally weight gain, which is something the pediatrician would do.
Parents will often, especially when moms start counting, you know, they want to know, like, how many diapers should be wet? How much poop should I be looking for? What, is there a guideline for that?
Well, it increases with every day after birth, and usually in terms of wet diapers, 1 more than the number of days old. So on day 2, 3 wet diapers, and so on.
Up to?
Usually around 6, sometimes more.
Yeah.
A day.
Stephen, one of the concerns that I've seen new moms come to me with is my baby's dehydrated.
Right.
You know, how do we know when a baby's
Well,
dehydrated?
the first thing you'll see is the baby will have fewer wet diapers, so the baby is making less urine. The second thing you may see is that the baby may have lost some weight if you're weighing the baby, and then the eyes may be fallen back or a little sunken, and the fontanelle, the soft spot up there, will be a little depressed. All those, and the mucous membranes in the mouth will be a little dry. Those are indications the baby is getting a little dehydrated.
And if you see any of those kinds of signs in your newborn, what should you do?
Really important to talk to your pediatrician. The pediatrician will tell you about giving some extra fluids, electrolyte solution we call it, but probably will see the baby because there's usually a reason why that's taken place, and they'll want to know why that has taken place.
A big concern moms have also, Beverly, is the production of milk, you know, making enough milk for the baby. Is there anything they can do to increase production of milk?
Nurse early and often, and the more milk that's taken out of the breast, the more milk the breasts make. And usually that is driven by the baby if the baby's feeding well, so early and often.
What about what mom should be eating? Are there any special rules for mom's nutrition when she's breastfeeding?
Good nutrition for the mother. Usually breast milk is going to be high quality no matter what the mother eats, but the mother needs to eat a good balanced diet for her own health.
Yeah, and eat consistently and not get too run down, because, you know, you can get run down really, really easy. And Wendy, sometimes moms get an infection in their breast called mastitis.
Right.
Talk to us about what that is and what do we do about it?
Mastitis is an infection in the breast. Usually it's characterized by the breast being more firm than usual, more tender, and mom may also have a fever. The mom really does need to call her OB/GYN because that needs to be treated, usually with antibiotics. She can breastfeed during the treatment.
And that, I think, throws a lot of women. It's like, you know, I have an infection in my breast. Why would I let my baby breastfeed? Won't they get the infection too?
No, and actually the antibiotics that we prescribe are safe to take during breastfeeding also. But really, mom will pass on the antibiotics to the baby and the baby will be fine.
What about pumping the breast? Is that something that women should routinely do just to get more milk or to store?
Not routinely. I recommend that women pump if their babies are not getting enough at the breast, or if they do need to increase their milk supply and the baby isn't doing that for them.
Do any of you guys pump? All of you do? And do you find it particularly uncomfortable? A lot of women have complained about pumping, you know, that it's uncomfortable.
At first, I think, you know, it takes some getting used to. It's like if you put the pump on wrong or something, you know, it's definitely painful.
And so you store the milk, and then you have plenty if you need others. Yeah.
For later.
Well, look how quiet he is now. Everybody is so quiet and so well rested. Very, very quiet. We love this, right? This is perfect. But I guarantee you guys will pay for this tonight. You know, sometimes insurance does cover breast pumps or lactation consultants. So be sure to check with your provider. So now, you've heard most of the answers about breastfeeding, but there's one other area in which these moms gave me some really expert advice. Getting through those early months of motherhood. Here are some nuggets of wisdom they shared with me before the show.
When I was home the first week alone, I made little goals for myself to go outside every day, to, you know, just get myself out. And, you know, tasks that seemed really daunting before I did them, if I made myself repeat them every day, seemed much much more doable.
Yeah, just little steps at a time. What about you, Gita?
I would say my major thing was once I had him, I sort of thought I could keep the same pace that I had before, and I would say sleep when the baby sleeps. That's the main thing. Don't worry about the friends and family who want to come over. Right. Don't worry about anything. Sleep when he sleeps, because you can wear out very quickly.
Well, and there could be a lot of pressure too when you have a newborn baby. Everybody wants to come and see the baby, and they want you to have the baby up, and they want to talk, and it can literally wear you out. So it's okay to just say, no, need a break.
Screen the calls.
Yeah, stop, no more. And what about you, Makita?
I would agree. Sleep when the baby sleeps. New babies need their sleep, but so do new moms. And I'd also say trust yourself, because there's nothing like that maternal instinct.
That's right. Yeah, that's so important. And I know that comes with experience, but all of your babies are so beautiful, and I hope that they grow healthy and strong. What great advice. And for more resources, you can check out the American Academy of Pediatrics website at aap.org. And there's also the site for La Leche League International, lalecheleague.org, which has breastfeeding information for you, or you can call them at 800-LA-LECHE. That's 800-525-3243. Well, that's it for today. I'm Dr. Winnie King, and I'll see you next time on Keeping Kids Healthy.
You know, and it's very discreet.
Yeah, and she feels
but also,
and yes, now this is a really cool top. This is a nursing top.
This is a nursing top.
Tell us how this works.
And I can kind of show you. She's a little sleepy right now.
Yeah, well, she's just, had her little feeding, so she's feeling good.
And you can just really position her, and she could just feed just like that.
Yeah, oh, that's fabulous. Yeah, and you can't tell what's going on. I mean, you know what's going on, but you're not showing any body parts that would make someone feel uncomfortable. Exactly. Well, let's talk a little bit about breastfeeding. Deb, give us some of the science on breastfeeding.
Well, breastfeeding and breast milk is the optimal nutrition for newborns. It contains the proper amount of proteins, carbohydrates, fats that are very important for a child's brain development. In addition, it provides the baby with immunity that will help protect the baby against infection.
And that's really important, because you'll probably, unfortunately, experience ear infections if you haven't with your other children, and so protecting them against infections is a huge thing. But there's also some health benefits for mom, too.
There are significant health benefits for mothers in terms of less postpartum bleeding after the baby's born due to the uterine contractions. Also, there's increasing evidence of the benefits in terms of mothers having a lower risk for premenopausal breast cancer as well as ovarian cancer.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, because we don't think of breastfeeding as being of any benefit to moms. We think of it as being more of a benefit for the baby, and doing it for the baby, but in fact you're also helping yourself. Now, Carrie Ellen, you have a 4-year-old daughter whom you did nurse, but you were a little reluctant about nursing Jaden. Tell us about that. Why was that the case?
Well, actually, I was more reluctant about nursing my daughter.
Your first one?
Because I had never seen anybody nurse around me. I didn't have any family members who nursed or any girlfriends. So it was a totally new experience for me. And it was incredibly uncomfortable the first time around.
How do you breastfeed a baby in public? And should you try? We'll find out right now on Keeping Kids Healthy. Hello, I'm Dr. Winnie King in the lobby of the Children's Hospital at Montefiore, so don't be surprised if you hear some noise in the background. When it comes to the best nutrition for your baby, just about all the experts agree that breastfeeding is the healthiest way to go. In fact, if you can do it, they even recommend that breast milk should be the only food you feed your baby for the first 6 months. After that, of course, you need to gradually expand the baby's diet to include other foods. But even then, if you can continue to breastfeed through your baby's first year, it will even make him less likely to get sick. But as natural as breastfeeding is, it isn't always easy to do, partly because it takes some guidance on how to get started, and partly because our society doesn't make it easy for moms to breastfeed as they go about their daily lives. So we decided to go to both kinds of experts to show you how to make it work. The doctors and the real experts, the moms who are doing it. Let's start with a group of moms who visited me in the studio a while ago to tell us and show us what to do. Now, is that the most adorable little talk show guest you've ever seen? This little girl is Sarah Johnson. Hi, honey. She's so precious. And she grew this big and healthy by breastfeeding. She's adorable. She's absolutely... Mom, you did a very, very good job. And Sarah brought her mom along, Robin, and a couple of little friends, too, like Zoe Alpert and Jaden Drawn. And Jaden is busy right now. All of these mothers are breastfeeding their babies, but that's a decision not every mother chooses to make. Today, there's no question scientifically that mother's breast milk is the ideal infant food in almost every case. But breastfeeding is a big commitment for mom and not as easy as some of the books and pamphlets for new moms make it sound. Yes, I know. You agree with that, right? As Carrie Ellen is definitely going to tell us later in the show about her experience. Now, we also have with us today Dr. Deborah Campbell. Now, she's the director of neonatology at Montefiore Medical Center, and we thought also that since we're here talking about nursing, we might as well show you how to do it discreetly without drawing a lot of attention to yourself if you have to nurse in a relatively public place. Now, Robin and Robin have graciously agreed to demonstrate, and now little Sarah has got her little sling here, and that's what she really digs this sling, right?
Yeah, she loves it. She falls asleep, and it's also a discreet way to breastfeed. It kind of goes over you to the side, and as she's pouched in there, Robin, I think you have one too. And you could just kind of have her in there.